order.
Some green
Okay,
light.
will the September 7th, 2016 meeting of the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission please come to order? Thank you all for your attendance this evening. For the benefit of those present who may not have participated in a P&Z meeting, I will review our public hearing procedure, which is as follows. We will read the legal notice for the public hearing portion of this meeting as published in the local newspaper. The applicants will then be invited to come forward and present their case, explaining to the commission and the public what is specifically being requested of the subject property. Written comments from town agencies pertaining to the application will then be read into the record if the commission has received any. The commissioners will then ask their clarifying questions, and the public will then be invited to ask any questions they have about the application. I will then ask those in attendance who support the application to please come forward and make their statement, and then I will ask those who oppose the application to please come forward and make their statement. As this is a public hearing, it will be necessary for those coming forward to ask questions or to speak for or against any application to please identify themselves and state their name and address for the record prior to proceeding. At the conclusion of all statements from the public and the applicant, I will close the public hearing on the application. The applicant and the public are then free to remain or leave for the balance of the public hearings and the regular meeting, at which time the commission will discuss each application under consideration and try to reach a decision. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to any decisions of this commission. The applicant and or any aggrieved party with legal standing will have the right to appeal this decision to Superior Court within the statutory time frame if they so desire. All decisions reached at this meeting this evening will be available to the public the next day by either visiting or calling the Planning and Zoning Office after 9:30 a.m. Seated this evening are the following Guilford Planning and Zoning Commissioners: George Underhill, Rich Wallace, I'm Ray Bauer, Walter Corbier, Phil Johnson, Rich Meyer, Josh Hirschman, Frank DeAndrea. Town staff present was George Kroll and Reggie Reed. Will the secretary please read the legal notice?
Notice is hereby given that the Guilford Public Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on September 7, 2016 at 7:30 p.m. Location at the Nathaniel B. Green Community Center, 32 Church Street, Guilford, Connecticut. Monunketuk Room, second floor, for the following purposes. Ralph Gallardi, 208 Shore Drive, map 57, lot 71, zone R3, special permit accessory structure on a lot less than 10,000 square feet, section 273-15G. Neil Dinnerman, 2631 Durham Road, map 105, lot 2, zone R8, special permit for accessory apartment for after-the-fact guest apartment, section 273-15. Richard Durso, 340 Rockland Road, map 119, lot 1A, special permit for accessory structure of 750 square feet, section 273-15. Jack Schaefer, 146 Daniel Avenue, map 10, lot 163, zone R2. Coastal area management, request to repair of an existing seawall above the CJL line at the projected site, section 273-91. Proposed zoning amendments regarding definition of coastal resilient height requirements, section 274-2. Proposed zoning amendment regarding pet boarding facilities, amend the zoning code by adding to table 5, line 42, pet boarding facilities, see section 273-22F as a special permit use SP under the column 1-2. Copies of these applications are available for inspection in the office of the Planning and Zoning Commission, Townhouse South, 50 Boston Street, Guilford, Connecticut. At this hearing, persons may attend and be heard, and written communication will be received. Dated at Guilford, Connecticut, this 17th day of August 2016, Tom Koss, Chairman.
Thank you very much. A few announcements before we get started. First of all, if you're here for the Town of Guilford application for the CAM site plan with regard to the Shoreline Greenway Trail from Madison Town Line to the intersection of Route 146 and Boston Post Road, that application has been withdrawn, and we will not be hearing that tonight and going forward with it. So if you're just here for that application, there's no need to stick around. In addition, Neil Dinnerman, 2631 Durham Road. This is a special permit after the fact for an accessory apartment. This application is going to be tabled until 9/21. Apparently, the abutters have not been notified, so that's going to take place, and that application will be heard for the first time on 9/21. Okay. Having said that, we'll start with Dennis Pacelli, 150 Rockland Road, Zone R8, special permit request addition to an existing accessory structure over 750 feet, sections 273-19 and 273-94.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Scott Anderson from Anderson Associates. This is the second public hearing on our request to add 325 square feet to an existing garage, all within the zoning setbacks. I don't believe there was any public input at the last meeting, so if there's any questions, I would feel free to answer them.
You have nothing new to add then at this point?
Not at this point, no.
Okay, any questions from the commission?
Well, there's a letter in here that's dated September 6th, I don't know. if you
Please,
read
why
it
don't we
last
read
time.
that into the record?
It's from Kevin, and it's Kevin McGee, the environmental planner. It says the proposed addition is located within the Inland Wetlands Commission regulated review area. The Guilford Inland Wetland Commission, at its August 10, 2016 meeting, approved a regulated activity for 150 Rockland Road for the construction of an addition to the garage as shown on zoning location survey and inland wetlands regulated activity plan, property of Dennis Pacelli, 150 Rockland Road, Guilford, Connecticut, dated June 30th, 2016, with conditions. And then there's another letter from Dennis Johnson dated, these weren't read into the record last time? It's dated September 7th, so.
I don't believe so.
Okay, and so this one says that the applicant's proposed garage addition does not conflict with the location or function of the existing septic system currently on site. And then there's a letter here from Dennis Pacelli himself. Do you want me to read this in, or?
I think that was read in at the last
Okay,
meeting.
perfect then.
Are there any other questions from the commission?
I got a question.
Sure, Rich.
So, we discussed in the last meeting that as a residential area, you can't keep a commercial vehicle here. Is this garage for the storage of a commercial vehicle?
It is for the storage of a 1984 Classic American vehicle, which if the zoning enforcement officer or any of the neighbors have a problem with it, we will apply for a variance to allow that vehicle to stay, but it is not being used for a commercial use. It is not intended to be a commercial vehicle, not registered as a commercial vehicle. So it's kind of a gray area as to whether it is a commercial vehicle or not. It's not going to be used as one. So
Don't our rules and regulations specify any vehicle with a gross vehicle weight over 1.5 tons is a commercial vehicle?
I believe it does.
So there's no gray area, it's a commercial vehicle.
Then my client will be applying for a variance for that fact.
Okay, good, thank you.
Reg, do you have anything to add on that?
No,
Okay.
I've been in contact with Mr. Pacelli, and we did discuss this, and he will apply for a variance. If the variance is not approved, then the truck won't be in the garage.
Okay. You still build the garage, but you can't put
He could build the garage,
the
there's,
truck in there.
he could add on to his garage. We're approving the addition to the garage, not the use of the truck on the property.
Any other questions from the commission?
Good.
Any questions from the public? Anybody in the public wishing to speak in favor? Anybody in the public wishing to speak against? Hearing no more comments, I'll close the public hearing on this application. Thank you. Okay, Richard Durso.
Ray, you got to request a motion that the public hearing be closed.
Okay.
Right?
I don't know, I've never used to do that, but we'll ask for a motion that the public hearing be closed.
So moved. The chair can just close the public hearing on his own?
We've always done that in the past.
I've done it both ways. I don't know what to
So
We've done
we'll
it
have-
both ways.
Well, in any event, let's...
second it.
Second it, let's all vote in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so it's closed. Richard Durso, 340 Rockland Road, special permit accessory structure in excess of 750 square feet to allow a 2,400-foot square garage. It's 273-15, second public hearing. Sir, go ahead.
All right, I'm looking to build a 60 by 40 garage to house the antique vehicles, a collection that I have, to get them all in one area, one specific place, which are scattered all over the state. And I have all the variances, and it's going to be between my house and the North Guilford Nursery. And That's pretty much it.
Could you state your name and address for the record for this?
Richard A. Durso, 340 Rockland Road, Guilford, Connecticut.
There's a letter here from Kevin McGee dated September 6th. Did you receive a copy of this letter?
No.
Okay. I'm going to read it and then I'll give you the letter.
Okay.
You have it. It says that the application is proposing to install a 60-foot by 40-foot garage for storage of antique cars just up the grading of the 100-foot wetlands regulatory review zone. The plans provided do not show soil and erosion control measures. In order to make sure that the wetlands are protected, I recommend the following conditions of approval. First, soil and erosion control measures shall be installed down slope of the construction to protect the adjacent wetlands from salutation. The Town of Guilford Zoning Enforcement Officer shall be notified to inspect sedimentation and erosion control measures prior to site construction. Soil stockpiles shall be contained by silt fencing and/or hay bales. Soil erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be maintained until vegetation is established or suitable material is installed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. The corners of the garage be staked out prior to construction so the wetlands enforcement officer can verify the distance of the construction from the wetlands. An 18-foot by 18-inch wide by 18-inch deep stone infiltration trench should be installed under the drip edge of the roof. And 5, no construction or material be disposed within the Inland Wetlands Commission regulatory review area without their approval. Do you have any problems with any of those conditions? Okay. So you can take this, and then there's one more from Dennis Johnson dated today. He is the Director of Health. The applicant's proposed garage does not conflict with the location or function of the existing septic system currently on site. So if you want, you can take these two. So you can have them for your own folders. Well, you should have them, so that you can refer back to them.
So then, sir, you're okay with those conditions and have no problem if we
No, I
make those
think I'm
conditions?
53 feet away from the septic system, and I'm 100 feet plus from the sucker growth.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Any other questions from the commission?
Yeah, no, I was just wondering how many cars or motor vehicles storing in. Are they all gasoline?
Offhand, probably 10 motor vehicles and maybe 4 motorcycles.
Or do you turn them over? I mean, is it
No.
trading it?
No, it's my personal collection. I buy them, I collect them.
Sounds very
I
nice.
do not sell vehicles.
Okay, just asking the question, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, I'll ask, any questions from the public? Ma'am, please state your name and address.
Sure. Betsy Christensen. I own North Guilford Nurseries, right next door. It's our my neighbor. He's been phenomenal. He takes care of his property wonderful. And I'm hoping he gets a nice new garage so I can go see the car. He actually bought my father's, this makes me want to cry, my father's
Model T,
Model T.
1926 model.
And that'll be housed in there, so his neighbors will approve it.
Thank you.
300 Rockland.
Any other questions from the audience? Hearing none, I'll ask, does anybody else want to speak in favor of the application? Does anybody want to speak against the application? Any other comments or questions from the commission? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, up next, Ralph Gagliardi, 208 Shore Drive. This is a special permit for an accessory structure on less than 10,000 square feet, section 273-15. Apparently, this is the first hearing on this application. And it'll be continued for the second public hearing at 9/21. Sir, name and address, please.
Yeah, Ralph Gagliardi, 208 Shore Drive.
Okay, maybe you can explain what you'd like to do.
Yeah, I just want to put a pre-built garage, 16 by 22, in my front, in front of the house.
Okay.
I got all the, there's no variances or anything. I got all the footage. Reggie Reed told me all the footages I needed, and I measured everything, so.
Okay, so he conforms to all the zoning regs, as far as you know, Reg. Okay. Are there questions from the commissioners?
Want to read a couple letters first?
Go ahead, please.
Anybody want to see a picture, drawings and stuff?
Very nice.
This is from Kevin McGee, dated September 6th. This application is proposing to install a 16 by 20-foot shed on crushed stone, just upgrading of the 100-foot wetland regulatory review zone to West Lake. The
plans provided do not show soil and erosion control measures. In order to make sure that the wetlands are protected, I recommend, is this what we just read?
No, you keep going.
That's the right one?
He says the same thing 100 times.
Okay. Sorry. Following conditions of approval. 1, soil and erosion control measures shall be installed downslope of the construction to protect the adjacent wetlands from siltation. The Town of Guilford zoning enforcement officer shall be notified to inspect the sedimentation and erosion control measures prior to the site construction. Soil stockpiles shall be contained by silt fencing and or hay bales. Soil erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be maintained until vegetation is established or suitable material is installed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement. An 18-inch by 18-inch deep stone infiltration trench should be installed around the perimeter of the shed. And 4, no material be deposited within the Inland Wetlands Commission's regulated review area without their approval.
Do you want one of these? Did you get one of them?
No.
Do you want this so that you can refer?
I gotta dig a trench around it?
It's just, yeah, well, Kevin's right there. He could explain it to you.
Oh, all right.
What do you think?
It's basically, since you're so close to the wetlands, the infiltration trench, you go down 18 inches, 18 wide with stone, captures all your rainwater, so it doesn't run into the lake.
So dig down 18,
Dig down 18 inches.
just put crushed stone?
Yep,
The same stone that I'm gonna put the shed on?
yeah,
Okay.
as long as there's no fines or silts in it, it's,
Yeah, no, yeah. Anything, just dig the hole, put the stone in, that's it.
yep.
Okay.
So then you're okay with those conditions if it's approved with them?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Okay. All right, any further questions from the commission? Any questions from the public? Any, sir?
I have a quick comment about the...
Name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Russell Campaigns, 131 Boston Street. I have one quick comment about the infiltration trench. There is a calculation that can be made associated with the storage capacity for the roof area. And so as the building gets smaller, the 18 by 18 can get a little excessive as far as the amount of storage. If the building's very big, it might not be large enough. So I've just seen a couple applications get approved with that trench, and there's a fairly simple calculation that with the free area that can be contained with the stonework. And I wonder whether there's an option that could be added for the applicant to review with Kevin, the formula. Actually, Westbrook has a formula in their zoning regulations. But I would just recommend it because it gets expensive it's a lot of yards of stone, and it's on another project that we were working on, it was upwards of, I think, 300% of the necessary storage for the rain to meet the code.
Or maybe we can amend the condition to say that it has to be in compliance with the recommended formula, and then maybe also that's something the zoning committee should take up.
Does that have to be, it has to be sloped, or just dig a trench around?
It's square level trench.
Oh, all right.
It's a matter of getting down to the good soil, so that's where the 18 inches coming in, also the 4 foot off the rainwater coming off the angle there, is what basically creates, it's not really storage volume, it's more of captures,
So you want it right on the bottom of the drip edge?
Yeah, so you're
Oh,
not
yeah.
getting the volume of water washing away from the house, or still being washed away from the house, there's no volume calculation.
So I'd have to do that after the shed is in, so I know exactly where it is.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, that's no problem.
So then why don't we just make that as part of the condition, that it would be conformed to the recommended formula with Kevin's approval, and then we put something on the agenda for the zoning committee, maybe you could suggest regulations so we don't overkill or underkill.
This hearing has to be continued for 2 weeks anyway, so
Right.
maybe Kevin can talk with Russ a little bit, kind of
And we
work
can
that
come
out.
back with the next
Come
one.
up with the exact
We
wording.
talk with town engineer also on it.
Any other questions from the public on this application? Hearing none, I'll ask, does anybody want to speak in favor? Or does anybody want to speak against the application? Okay, then we'll continue this application to, I'll make a motion that we continue the application to the 9/21
So just
meeting.
come here on the 21st?
Correct, that's the mandatory second public hearing.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's continued. Okay, the next one's Jack Schaefer, 146 Daniel Avenue. This is a CAM site plan to repair an existing seawall above the coastal jurisdiction line. We're going to hear this, we're going to open this application and hear it tonight. However, we will not decide it. I believe State DEP, George, has asked for additional time to consider and give us their input. So we'll open it and we'll continue it after your presentation till the 21st.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Michael Harkin. I'm a professional engineer and principal of Harkin Engineering, located at 78 Wolf Hollow Lane in the town of Killingworth, Connecticut. Again, here tonight on behalf of my client, Mr. Jack Schaefer, for his property at 146 Daniel Ave. Mr. Schaefer is in the audience, if you want to give a little wave. Just a little bit of background about the parcel. It was the seawall itself, as you can see on the plan. You have highlighted areas which are in orange, which were repaired. You have a large section that did not need any repair. And then on the plan, you have this pink line, which is the coastal jurisdiction line. So we're way above the coastal jurisdiction line, so we don't need to go to the office of Long Island Sound. It's just a simple CAM application. My clients had just recently, and I say recently, within the last year and a half, 2 years, have purchased the property. Before that, it was a seasonal cottage. It still is a seasonal cottage. But it was damaged during both Irene and Sandy, and none of the damage on the seawall was repaired. It wasn't really rented out or anything. My clients had purchased it and started with the inside, doing some modifications, painting and things like that. Last spring, they decided to start working on the outside to repair those stone walls that were damaged. My client lives in Glastonbury. He doesn't know the ins and outs of the shoreline and what you have to do for construction around here. So he promptly got a cease and desist from the town to stop construction until he put forth a CAM application. That was in the spring. So he decided not to put the CAM application in over the summer because he didn't want to do any work during the summer months because everybody's down there. He wanted to wait till after the summer to do it. Todd Anderson did the original survey of the parcel. We did the engineering on the CAM application. We just held it until the summer is over, so we're submitting it now so my client can finish with the repairs. In the file, just for some housekeeping, we did send out the certificate of mailings. We did send that into the Planning and Zoning Office, as well as the green cards that we had gotten back. Also within the file, we submitted 3 letters from the adjoining property owners that the green cards went out to in support of the project. I did get a 4th tonight, but I'm going to make a copy and submit it because the hearing's going to be left over just so we have a physical copy because this is the original.
Do you want those read into the record?
Excuse me?
Do you want those read into the record?
I don't think they need to be read into the record. I'm just going to paraphrase one at the end of my presentation just so everybody can hear it. Again, so what we have here is 2 sections of wall that's repaired. The one that you see to the northerly side is completely done. There is a picture in the CAM application. I'll distribute you one around. The one to the south was under construction when it was stopped. This area in green was an area where there was vegetation. There were some trees. On some of the pictures, you can still see the roots and things of that nature. There are 3 exposed pipes in this area, which shows that they were covered at one time, and they did bleed through the wall. Within the packet of the original application, this is a historical photo. I believe it's from the 50s. We kind of just highlighted it so you can see it. It's very grainy. The problem with this project is that my clients had just recently purchased it, so they have no photos of what the wall was like before they owned the property, and the previous owners are long gone. When you go onto the historical sites on Yukon from 1934 all the way up to 1995, you see the vegetation in this area. So we had a hard time trying to document what was previously there. In this photo, which is attached, you can see this area that I'm talking about in green, and you can see those very large boulders, which we perceived as being the original wall down there. Obviously, somebody can't move those by hand, so that's what we were building to. We were able to go back and touch base with one of the neighbors who's in charge of the Indian Cove Association. We got some historical photos from him. This is one from '89. You can see this portion, which is the northerly portion, which shows it in place. That's the section that you see right here. And then again, we have this photo. I believe it's from 1964, maybe. And what you can see is the house in question, a person on a sailboat, which the picture was intended to be taken of, but you can faintly see the vegetation in that rock wall in there. So we're trying to build a case that, hey, that wall's been there all the time. We do have a lot of documentation supporting that. The question is, where is that wall exactly, or when it was originally built? Again, with the photos that we have, we show those large boulders. Obviously, that's what we're building on top of, again, and out of the coastal jurisdiction line. So Most importantly, I think out of all three letters, before I end my presentation, is one of the people that we contacted to give us some vital information on the site was Mr. Chris Dejan, who lives at 18 Meriden Street. He submitted a letter dated August 18th, 2016. I'll just really paraphrase this real quick. It's to whom it may concern, in regard to Jack Schaefer, 146 Daniel Ave, representing the Indian Cove Association, who's the adjacent property owner of the Bay Street right-of-way, which is the dock right here. I would like to state to the Commission that we, the Indian Cove Association, have no issues with the repair of the seawall as it is currently proposed and now appears before you. Additionally, I would like to add that I am personally, dating back to the mid-1950s, quite familiar with the portion of the Schaefer property under review. As it happens, my grandfather had a pulley line for a rowboat in this area that was attached at its landward end to ledge rock, more or less, along an easterly extension of the southerly boundary of the Schaefer property. That's what he's saying over in here. Hence, I spend many hours walking over the rocks and vegetation in this area, both as a youth, teenager, and young adult. I've also been, as an adult, responsible at different times for maintaining the Indian Cove dock facility, which is right here, which was added to my awareness of the activity for maintaining the dock. To the best of my recollection, and as well as I've been able to determine from family photographs, the boundary defined by the current seawall trims the earlier boundary by 2 feet landward. So basically what he's saying is the wall was actually pushed out further than we were building it. He said this trimming being caused progressively and cumulatively by erosion from hurricanes Gloria, Irene, and Sandy, along with various unnamed nor'easters. The location of the seawall should in no way be considered to be an attempt to acquire earthland land that was previously there. So, you know, this is as good as we get from the historical nature of the site. Mr. Teach has been there since the 50s, and he supplied a couple of those photos that you see there. So with that being said, I believe that the project is going the public hearing will be left over to the next meeting so we can hear from DEP and gather more information and insight from them.
Very good.
Thank you.
Any questions?
There's a letter here,
Sure.
Kevin.
Why don't we read that in?
It's dated today. This application is for the after-the-fact repair of an existing seawall located above the coastal jurisdiction line. The application needs to be tabled to a future date due to a Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection 35-day mandatory municipal deferral requirement for shoreline flood and erosion control structures. The application was received by the Planning and Zoning Department on August 15, 2016. The DEP review has been started by John Goucher, who has concerns regarding the existence of the original wall as viewed from historic aerial photographs. I conducted a site visit with Mike Harkins of Harkins Engineering on September 6, 2016, and have provided John Goucher with copies of the photographs to assist with his review. The coastal area management regulations do not allow for the construction or extension of shoreline flood and erosion control structures unless there is no feasible, less environmentally damaging alternative, and where all reasonable mitigation measures and techniques have been provided to minimize the adverse environmental impacts.
We totally agree with what he's saying, you know. With the wall not being there, obviously that's an erosion control structure. We're just replacing what was previously there at the same height, virtually the same location. Historically, they say it was actually 2 feet further, but again, we're using those big rocks as the base.
Any further questions from the commissioners? Questions from the public? Anybody wishing to speak in favor? Or anybody wishing to speak against the application? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to continue this application to the 9/21 meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Neil Dennerman, 2631 Durham Road. This is an after-the-fact application for an accessory apartment. If I can get a motion to...
That one actually got moved to the 21st. I think you started.
Okay, so we already tabled it. I'm just going to get a motion to. Fine. Okay, Town of Guilford is off, so we'll move on to the proposed zoning amendments. First one regarding the definition of coastal resilience height requirements, section 274-2. This is the first public hearing on this application.
Good evening, I'm Russell Campaign, 131 Boston Street. I am the current chair of the Planning Committee, And we have been picking up a few things that were outlined in the POCD as well as the Community Coastal Resilience Plan. And the topic that we are looking at is what the impacts of the changes in the FEMA documentations are and how they should be reflected to both encourage better resilience in the shoreline with the measures that the planning and zoning can take and the rules that are governed by the planning and zoning in hoping to encourage them. And so we looked at the two big items that were reviewed under the coastal resilience study, and that was the buffer zones and the height restrictions or the height limitations or increases that are proposed by the FEMA documents. We broke them up, and what we're going to do, just because of the sort of nature and the complexity of some of these issues, we're going to talk about them first about the height, and then we're actually going to continue to work on the buffer zones and come back to you with a second proposed amendment. So right now it's the issues associated with the height that were recommended. And there were three things that were talked about in the Coastal Resilience Plan. The first is to look at the addition of a freeboard. And what a freeboard is basically taking the FEMA maps and proposing to add a certain amount of extra height to them to buffer the newly constructed properties or modified properties in anticipation of potential future higher sea level rise, and as well in what we've been facing is map updates quite regularly where people are building and then finding themselves non-conforming. And in response to that, in looking to create better resilience, to liberalize some of the height definitions in order to encourage and allow more flexibility for designers to accommodate those additional heights and still maintain the character that we're looking for on the shoreline area. And then the last piece, which is sort of in combination with the flood ordinance, which is separate from the planning and zoning, but that is a recommendation to potentially build certain more exposed structures, which is called coastal A structures, to a V-zone standard, V-zone standard being direct wave action properties that require pure construction and are defined under a different set of scenario. And that is really reacting to a new mapping category that's been released in the FEMA over the last 4 or 5 years, which is called the LIMWA, which is the Limited Wave Action Zone, which is wave action that can occur between 1.5 and 3 feet, whereas the V zone is over 3 feet, and the A zone, which is the still water flooding zone, is saying that no waves would act on a property greater than 1.5 feet. So to start, we're looking to basically apply a 1-foot freeboard over all 3 of those zones, and they have to be applied in slightly different ways in order to achieve the same result. But that 1-foot freeboard is sort of, it results in about a 20 to 30% reduction in those homeowners' insurance rates, because it is seen as one of the easiest and most cost-effective ways to reduce, to increase resiliency in these properties and reduce storm damage. And so that's the aim, and that's what we agreed to in the way that we would apply this. And really, the A zone is the only one that sort of is somewhat questionable as to its effect, but so much of the Guilford shoreline, A zones are affected by coastal flooding. It's not as though we have much inland flooding that's just river action flooding. Even our rivers are affected by the tidal waters basically backing up the rivers and causing much of the flooding in town. So I think we're sort of in agreement that the A zone also is applicable, and the 1-foot freeboard would have a good return both on the rates that people would face in insurance, as well as just the loss prevention within the town. So the first diagram here is to talk about how we are reacting to that in a way to liberalize and sort of accommodate this a little bit more in the way that the zoning is written. And so the existing zoning regulations works off of a 35-foot max height limit. It's to the very peak of the roof, and it's from average grade that's taken 10 feet away from the building around the perimeter of the building. This diagram, which I'll hand out for you, follow because things are a little small. So the first diagram shows what we have now, which is very simple, but it works off of the very peak of the roof. What we're proposing, and what a few other jurisdictions, including Madison and some southern Connecticut areas that I've worked in, have changed to start to look at it more from the average of the roof. In other words, from the average height being measured in the average point of the roof between the peak of the roof and the eave of the roof. And the concept being that basically the roof slope has very little to do with the perceived bulk of the house. You really, when you look at a house, it's more about the eave height, how much wall you're seeing, and the way it relates to the adjacent homes. It's less about the overall height of the house. And so what this is, the sort of effect of our peak height is when you get pushed up by FEMA, you flatten the roof to basically make the same size house with a flatter roof, but basically making the perceived bulk seem larger and taking some of the character, because most of the shoreline character, the homes have the 10-12, 12-12 pitch. I mean, that's the common cottage theme that we have on most of the shoreline. So what this does is it changes and gives more flexibility to allow the roof to do this, but to be measured from an average height down to the grade, to the average pitch of the roof. And so that's the first change that we're proposing, and what it comes along with in the package that was handed out earlier, actually, that George gave you, it comes along with having to define how you measure what types of structures to. And so there's some small diagrams in the definitions that we're proposing that talk about the various roof shapes, a gambrel, a standard pitch, a flat roof, a dome roof. They all sort of go to sort of the same concept as being, what are your perceived bulk when you're viewing the property from a street? How do you sort of see where the height of the house is and the size of the house in relation to the average height? And so, so it does make it a little more complex in some ways, but it does make it, I think, with those diagrams, very clear as to what our expectations are when we're setting that forward to designers. The other piece that's actually quite nice about it is dormers. And dormers you start to see on a lot of these shoreline houses, where it really is a 3-story house, even though it's got an eave on it. They're often maxing out that 3rd-story living. And one of the things we've done in here is actually, there is a certain point that you cross where that 3rd-story dormer, if you have too much living space on the 3rd floor, starts to look like a 3rd story. And so the way that this is defined is that you measure to the midpoint of the roof up to 50% of dormering on the house. If you go over 50% of dormering on the house, you start to call that a 3rd story, and you have to measure to the higher roof point in that. And again, that's starting to sort of saying, yes, dormers are current and very much historically applicable in these shoreline communities. But once you start to make a dormer across the whole side of the building, it starts to really read as a 3-story building, and that's not necessarily appropriate. So that is another portion of this definition that talks about when you cross that line, and the line is basically when a dormer, when you add up all the pieces of dormer, and it exceeds 50% of the overall width of the building, then that higher roof of the dormer starts to measure the average height, and that will obviously control this perceived bulk of that. So that is the height definition change that we're proposing, which I think is much more sophisticated, much more reactive to what we like about the shoreline community and the way we work, and I think it will also give some flexibility to the way that people then can bring that forward into dealing with some of the pressures that they're facing on the FEMA properties with the raising of the flood requirements and such. So then when the next piece, yes, I'm sorry.
One comment about that.
Sure.
This wasn't invented out of whole cloth. This is pretty much exactly modeled on the town of Madison's approach to this, which obviously has very similar architectural character, very similar development styles and issues associated with the coastal area. So this isn't something new that we invented just for Guilford. It's following the pattern of Madison, and Madison gave us permission to use it. They don't have any copyright on this, so.
And it actually is to give further credit. It's Planometrics and Glenn Chalder, who really was the one that did the Madison zoning regulation change. And he's also used it in New Canaan and West Road. I think there's 5 or 6 other communities that are shoreline communities like ours. But he did extensive research as far as the modeling of the effects of this on keeping within the character of the shore. Now,
how do they tie it? Or
yes.
How do you tie it, the change in height to the BFE and the freeboard?
That's where I'm about to go
okay,
now.
sorry.
Okay. So the next piece and the liberalizing piece, because really that portion is it's giving a little bit of flexibility, but it's not really it's not liberalizing the height restrictions, which is what was recommended by the Plan of Conservation Development and the Community Coastal Resilience Plan.
And you make
So,
another comment on this.
sure.
That's going to apply to all
Yes.
residential buildings in Guilford, not just the coastal.
Not just
those
the
new definitions.
And as well, just to say that right now, the R8 zone allows for a 40-foot total height limit, We're, in the language of this, also proposed that the average height go up to 33 feet and the total height go up to 40 feet in that zone. So basically, we're maintaining the same scale of what we have in the R8 zone, I'm sorry.
There are very few R8s that are actually in A zones. Or
No, there probably aren't any. I don't think there are. But what I'm saying and what George is saying is this definition will apply equally throughout the whole of the town. So that's sort of somewhat independent from the shoreline aspects of it. We revisited this and made this change mainly because I think it's a better way to look at all the housing in Guilford and measure, because perceived bulk is less to the ridge and more to the average bulk of how much roof and sidewall there is. So I think it's a better application for the measurement of all of this. I do also think it gives more design flexibility to shoreline when we get into this next area.
Two different definitions of height, one applying to the coastal area and another applying to the rest of the town. We wanted it to be consistent across the board.
As
But
opposed to definitions that apply to buildings that are going to face an actual flood risk.
that's a special thing.
That's about, yeah, that's,
Yeah.
so what we've also changed is the options you have for the average grade definition. And so if you're not in a flood zone, the average grade remains the same. It's basically 10 feet off the building, 10 feet on center around the perimeter of the building, basically gives you the average grade of the building lot. And that's what you're measuring all the inland lots to the height. In the flood zones, we're proposing to link the average grade to allow for it to be linked to the base flood elevation. And what we're proposing, after doing a little bit of study on this, we're proposing to link it to be the base flood elevation minus 4 feet. So if you look at a normal house in the shoreline area, it's set a certain amount above the grade. And so if I look at the application of how this would work on this diagram, it's somewhat complex, but it actually makes it fairly simple. So in the shore area, you'll have the option of either utilizing the average grade, if that's higher, or the base flood elevation of that underlying FEMA zone as defined by the map, minus 4, okay? So, so in a standard A zone condition, we're proposing 1 foot of freeboard. We're saying that, which means that the finished floor of the building needs to be 1 foot higher than the base flood elevation on that map. You minus 4 from that, and you're back to 5 feet to the average grade, just like we had on the standard house in a normal zone. So that 5 feet that is linking the average grade to the finished floor height is sort of the same and consistent between the two. But what it does, it allows us to break free from that. So if the FEMA pushes the house up, it's giving that flexibility to that homeowner to measure the house from the BFE minus 4 rather than the average grade. Now it's capped at
BFE
40
plus 1 minus 4. In our
BFE
case,
plus
if
1, we're forcing them up a foot, but then we're taking BFE minus 4, so it's a 5 foot difference.
Plus freeboard minus 4.
Exactly. Yep. No. BFE plus 1, BFE minus 4, and the finished floor needs to be 1 foot above BFE. So it's 5 foot total difference between finished floor and the average grade.
So the freeboard doesn't actually apply to this calculation by itself.
The freeboard doesn't apply to this calculation. You don't include it. We're forcing them up a foot, but we're giving them, we're giving them a new measurement of average grade that's somewhat decoupling it from the average surface grade. So if you look at the existing condition, the way that we thought about how high a first floor is above grade is it's about 5 feet, the two 10-foot floor heights, and then the 10-12 pitch roof. That's the model that we based all of everything on, both in the current regs and these new regs. So this 5 feet is being carried into that zone in that relationship we just discussed, the 5 feet being the freeboard that we're putting on everyone, and the 4 feet of the BFE minus 4, so that the average grade now measured in the flood zones is keeping the same proportions in relationship from that, and not tying it back to finished grade. Now, finished grade, we want to cap that. We don't want someone that's in a V17 zone to be building a house that's 45 feet tall. So we're capping that at 40, at a 40-foot max, which is on the definitions, actually. Oh yeah, from here. So 40 feet. So basically, the variable is only 3 feet. That's all we're ever giving anyone is an additional 3 feet if they're in a condition where the FEMA flood zone is pushing them up, pretty far. And that's not many properties that are actually in that condition that would use that full 3, and very few that would exceed that. So that does put a total cap on all of it so that it can't be too much leveraged and go outside of what we're used to seeing in the shoreline zones. And it applies a little bit differently to the coastal AE zone and the VE zone, because those actually get squished further by FEMA, because they are required to have the BFE measured to the bottom of the lowest horizontal member. And so structurally, you're adding, instead of 1 foot of structure in this case, or for measurement from the top of finished floor, you're being forced to measure to the bottom of the lowest horizontal member. So you're either 2 feet or 3 feet further taken out of the height of the building. And we're not giving any more grace for those conditions. We're keeping them capped on it, but they have a little bit less leeway in the way that they're designed, because FEMA is requiring the measurement to be at a different location. And further complexity is that what's happened is the building code of Connecticut has leapfrogged the FEMA requirements, and our flood ordinance is based on the FEMA requirements, but the state building code exceeds them right now and has added freeboard. So the freeboard we're imposing on the VE zone and the coastal A zone is actually already built into the building code. And so our modification is just bringing us in line with what is already the state code. So one place that we are going outside of that is in the A zone, but I will argue that the A zone, in our condition, the A zone is applicable to all inland flooding districts throughout the country. Our A zone flooding districts are very unique in that they're very coastally tied, and the vast majority of our property is basically seeking, they're going to be seeing storm surge, not river flooding, and they're going to be seeing an impact of sea level rise. So the freeboard, I think, is applicable in our case to impose that. But it is fairly complex the way that these various requirements interface, but the whole upper half of the diagram is basically consistent between them. It's just that the person will have lower ceiling heights in these two conditions as they have to meet other requirements of the height of the floor.
What brought you to choose 1, not 2? Is that what's in the Connecticut Building Code? I mean, for instance, most of Rhode Island has chosen 2. A lot of other places, I mean, obviously some places that got really ripped out by Sandy have chosen sort of draconian additional freeboard, but 2 feet is happening in a lot of places.
It is. The way that the insurance rates fall off is you see very little on the second foot. And so a lot of our justification when we discussed this was based on, very large insurance premium reduction. So if you take a V zone and your base rate for a compliant new structure is about $10,500 a year for $250,000 worth of coverage. If you have 1 foot of freeboard added to that policy, you drop your policy to about $6,500. It's 40% less. And you add another foot to that, and you maybe save another $700. So the curve falls off pretty drastically from that side of things, and there has to be a certain justification. I'm in total agreement with encouraging that, but forcing it, I question. So what this also will do, because one of the things that you get into a dilemma with, right now, the vast majority of the projects seek a variance for their height under the current standards, and I don't know what percentage, but probably a pretty high percentage of rebuilds and raises have to get a variance. I don't know. But they get them, but one of the things that the criteria of a variance is it can be no greater than is necessary to alleviate the hardship. So if someone wanted to go in and say, I want to build a freeboard, I want to go a foot higher because I will save $4,000 on my yearly insurance, they might get it, but if a neighbor's not happy with that, it's going to get thrown out because it was more than was necessary to alleviate the hardship. The hardship is the FEMA requirement, and so it's bare minimum necessary to alleviate that, and there's no allowance for someone to build a little bit more conservatively. And I think that's a shame because there's, it's such a small incremental cost to go up 1 foot higher once you're raising a building that it really makes no sense not to. And so what this does is the vast majority of projects won't need a variance. Probably, I would think 80% of these projects wouldn't fall outside of these requirements. And I think with the installation of this, I would think that the variances may be less, we would be more restrictive in what was granted variance because we're giving more accommodation of basically 3 feet of wiggle room on a lot of properties to give more. And so someone can build then a foot higher than our current freeboard, if they so choose. But we're not using the variance system to do that. We're using the base regulations to do that. But 2 feet is you know, when you come in, what you're going to start to face, I mean, you know, staircases running into, like, there's a lot of implications of that. And you know, our coastline is so varied it's not consistent in a way that I would think that that across the board a 2-foot freeboard would necessarily make sense.
We don't provide any additional incentive for that extra foot of freeboard either under this particular sort of regime.
We give allowance to potentially do it without getting a variance. So yes, I do think there's an incentive, because I think if someone talks to a designer and the site accommodates it, that most clients, after they're investing the money and realize that it's, you know, whatever, 5% more to raise it another foot, that they will choose to do that. But in most cases, they're restricted. They can't because of height variance. You know, so this will give most projects a little bit of liberty.
But then when they want, for instance, that second foot, which is reasonably common,
They're
necessarily additional.
The only jurisdiction, and I didn't do extensive research, but Connecticut has not embraced the 2-foot freeboard.
No.
And Rhode Island did it top down. They did it at the state level, not at the town residential level. So it's the state building requirements that are requiring the 2-foot freeboard. The only 2-foot freeboard I've seen is actually New Canaan, and they're inland. They're an inland flooding district. So they have maybe 24 properties or something like that that are in the zone, and they were seeking, I think, some reductions through the community rating system in doing that. That's the only place I've ever seen the 2-foot freeboard, and I think we're ahead of the game, ahead of the curve on the 1-foot freeboard. You know, Madison and Branford really haven't moved in that direction. Yeah, it's really Old Saybrook is the only one.
And Guilford, I mean, can the planning committee move us forward on the community rating system?
We are. It's not as much the planning committee as it's more in Mark Demiani, who is the FEMA enforcement officer. He has made application 2 years ago or something along those lines, I think, and was following up on it, but hasn't gotten response from them. Their last guideline for the community rating system was 2006. They update everything on a 10-year cycle, so it's supposed to come out this year. I have a feeling that they haven't been acting on community rating updates because it's 10 years old and they're working on a new update as to what recommendations for the standards are. So that 2006 document is pre all these latest storms. It's actually been leapfrogged by most of the mapping that's been done. So hopefully there's a
it's likely to become more generous with this.
So the community rating system is an application that a town can make that says that they're doing work to exceed the base requirements of the FEMA, and what it does is they then get a certain percentage reduction on the premiums across the board. And so you can get a 5%, a 10%, a 20%, a 30%, a 50% reduction across the board for all ratepayers in the town on their insurance if the enforcement is proven to be. And it's some enforcement, which this will go a long way in moving us toward that direction. It's also on the side of outreach and education and community efforts and other things. There's a whole list of things that need to be done. But that is in the works, and Mark is working on it, but it's less a planning and zoning issue than it is we did look, just to sort of bring you up, there are many jurisdictions that actually bring the flood ordinance, it's now a separate document and enforced with the engineering department right now, actually have that in their planning and zoning. And I actually came to the discussion saying that I felt that was a better way to approach it, because this standalone document that's embedded within the ordinances of the town is not something that most designers making application or homeowners making application to for a building permit are reviewing. It's kind of hidden in a way where the planning and zoning documents are they're obviously looked at and reviewed by everybody that's going to be doing it. But there were there was some back and forth and some concern, and Mark felt strongly that the enforcement should stay on the engineering side, and they didn't want to have Mark enforcing planning and zoning issues. So we retreated from that, and we're going to work in parallel, and Mark's going to do the updates that are applicable, for the ordinance. But I do think some of the language in here will trigger the question as to where to look for more. And there was one reference of that document in your planning and zoning. We're going to reference it again in this section so that it's clear, so that it's tied in and you know where to look to make sure you're meeting all of that. But I think that the 1 foot is, is a good start, and and I think that the liberalization will give flexibility for homeowners if they so choose and have the ability to raise it higher without being limited by a zoning variance, which may say that they can't raise it higher.
You're also moving ahead of the game on the AE zone by going to the lower member versus the first floor.
The coastal AE, right, I'm sorry. So one of the things that's a little confusing is that there's this new coastal AE zone. It is recommended by the Plan of Conservation Development that we use V zone standards for the construction of the coastal A zone. So that's the zone that can have up to 3-foot wave action. The difference is that it's a pier foundation with breakaway walls rather than a conventional foundation with venting. This plan is proposing to move that coastal A into the requirements of the coastal the V zone standards of construction. So that is leapfrogging the FEMA requirements, but it's actually recommended by FEMA, but not required by FEMA or building code. And that builds in the freeboard into it. That's why we're not applying the freeboard. And I actually should hand this out because this was a little bit of an edit. And we'll get this together because there's another hearing. But there's one modification to the way we define these freeboards that I caught at the very last minute, so it differs from the package that you received from George. But basically, it sections the 3 different zones that we've been discussing, and it separates out this coastal AE, so it doesn't get a double freeboard applied to it, because the change that we're proposing to apply the zone standard to the coastal A is going to move the measurement of where you're measuring the BFE to the bottom structure from the top of floor. And so that is a built-in freeboard the way it's being proposed versus taking the coastal A and actually moving it 2 times, once, applying the freeboard from the bottom horizontal member and the finished floor. And so in most instances, it's at least a foot. In most structural instances, to build a V zone, it's more like 2 feet of structural depth. So you are pushing that up, and that is exceeding the current standards in the way that they're laid out.
The lowest horizontal member will be in this.
The
right?
lowest horizontal member for the coastal A is right on the BFE in the coastal A condition. The current requirement of the code and FEMA is that it's to the top of finished floor, and to the building code, it's the top of finished floor plus 1 foot. But the structural depth that's required to build V zone is always going to be greater than the 1 foot freeboard. So we're building in a freeboard by requiring it to be built to V zone standards. And really, V zone standards, I mean, a 3-foot wave can do incredible damage. And I actually think it's an incremental change for FEMA. I think FEMA is going to bring those LIMWA, those coastal A zones, into the V zone in the near future, because I think that there's a lot of study that suggests that that is the next step, but they're doing an increment. This is not very applicable. There's only a handful of properties in Guilford, actually, that are in the LIMWA zone, this new zone that was created by FEMA. Madison has many more properties, but just the way our bays and our offshore reefs.
Mouth of the river or something?
They're actually westerly facing. It's kind of strange. I don't know why, but it's westerly. There's a couple properties that actually have houses in them. In Old Quarry. Sachem's Head is not LIMWA. That is just that V17 zone, which is.
Said are not subject to.
They're not subject to that. So really our highest rated zone in the Guilford underlying zoning, I think, is V15 right now. So if the underlying land is at 8, and it's a V15 minus 4 is 11, they're going to be maxed out by that cap in that V15 zone. But any of the V14, V13 is all going to be not maxed out by the 40-foot cap, and they're going to have allowance to build.
40 feet?
I'm sorry, what?
The cap is 40 feet or 43?
The total cap is 40 feet right now.
With everything.
Average grade. We felt that a 3-foot variance in height was where we that allowed a 3-foot additional height for people to utilize was a good, was a good starting point for that, because you start to get buildings. I mean, there's a concern with the character, and at some point, someone needs to squeeze the building, to to keep in character with the neighborhood.
37 plus 3, really.
Well, it's the 37 measured from the BFE minus 4, but the 3 foot is the 37, yes, plus 3 equals 40. The 40 is from average grade, so that the house is going up and down that 3 feet, but once it hits that 3 feet over average grade, it's not allowed to go any higher. You see, so we're actually building in more than just that 3 feet in this diagram, because most shoreline construction doesn't have the walkout basement, but it's, it's kind of modeling against our current regulations of the
35-foot zone, once it hits 38 above average grade, that's it?
No, in all zones, it's capped at 40 feet, but it's, the average grade that you're measuring the height to is based on the BFE minus 4. And so if an underlying zone is changed on a map and is raised, the house has the ability to be raised too. And that's the other nice link that this has, because once you've raised a house, it actually is usually set up to raise it easily again. The way that you structure it, it actually is fairly inexpensive to raise it again. So that again, if that will maybe do without a variance, the ability to raise it again, if the map's underlying change, then you're given another foot of height. So those are, I haven't seen this. This is something that's unique to Guilford. I haven't seen this, but so it mostly came out of our discussions and but the linkage between the maps and the average grade measurement, I think makes a lot of sense, because it's really what is determining the condition that the people are facing and measuring off of what it is what it is they're facing as far as the changes, the underlying current of where they're being squished by a cap that's from average grade, and then FEMA raising the home up from underneath. This alleviates that a little bit.
They've got everybody a 5% discount on their CRS. So.
Yeah, through a community rating system, yes, that hopefully that application moves forward. And this would be a big piece to it. There's actually, the buffer zones, which we're going to take up next. Those are the main action items that were presented to the P&Z. The other action items are to other areas of town to address the coastal resilience.
Are there any other questions from any of the other commission members at this point? Let me just go to the audience. Is there any questions that anybody in the audience has? The applicant. Okay, anybody want to speak in favor of this or in opposition to it? Okay, any more questions or input from the commission at this first hearing? George?
Well, we're saying is, if you don't understand this, don't worry about it, trust us.
Right.
And we do have to continue this hearing.
Right, we're going to continue it anyways until 9/21. So if anyone has questions or wants to get any more information, I'm sure we'll have the opportunity then. So let me ask for a motion to continue this to the 9/21 meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, next up is another proposed zoning amendment regarding pet boarding facilities. This is an amendment to the zoning code by adding to Table 5 a line number 42 pet boarding facilities as a special permit use under column for the I-2 zone. This is the first hearing on this matter.
For the record, my name is Tom Stevens. I'm a professional engineer and land surveyor. My office is at 141 Durham Road in Madison. I'm here with Sal LaFata, the property owner. Christian DeLay and Michael Rothstein are going to be the operators of the pet boarding facility. The property that brought us here is located on Soundview Road, and I'll point it out once the sheets are all passed out. And in order to have a pet boarding facility, we had to come to the Planning and Zoning Commission to get the regulations amended to allow for it. So if you look at that 1117 handout, the Soundview Road property is at the center right of the sheet, and the particular parcel of land I've highlighted in red.
Okay.
Red on purple.
This one here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But if you look, there are 4 I-2 properties throughout the town, 4 purple properties.
I don't know what's wrong with these purple ones, but that's okay.
The regulations as proposed, I could read them into the record, or you could enter into the record, whatever your pleasure.
Why don't you read them in?
Okay, it's to amend the zoning code by adding to table 5, line number 42, pet boarding facilities, C 273-22F, as a special permit use, SP, under the column I-2. Amend zoning code by adding a new section as follows. Definition of a pet boarding facility. Premises maintained and operated as a business for the grooming, boarding, daycare, and/or training of dogs and cats. Boarding facilities provide non-permanent, overnight, and daily care for dogs and cats. 273-22F, pet boarding facilities. Pet boarding facilities are allowed by special permit, SP, in the I-2 zone in accordance with Article X and the following standards. Minimum parcel size. The facility must be located on a lot of at least 5 acres in size. Front setback 40 feet from the street line. Side setback 20 feet from the side property line with at least 50 feet for the sum of the 2 sides. Rear setback 40 feet from the rear property line. Height, maximum height should be 40 feet. Lot coverage, maximum lot coverage should be 30%. Setback from coastal resource, no building or structure should be less than 25 feet from a coastal resource. No building, run, pen, or enclosure designed or intended for occupancy by animals should be less than 100 feet from a residential property line, residential zone district boundary line, or within 150 feet of an existing dwelling. All runs, buildings, runs, pens, or enclosures designed or intended for occupancy by animals should be fully enclosed with walls, roof, and windows, and shall be ventilated by louvered or baffled openings or by mechanical ventilation equipment. All runs, pens, or other enclosures designed or intended for occupancy by animals shall be surrounded by walls, solid fences, or earthen berms no less than 6 feet in height. All waste from animals shall, it says B, but it should be BE, there's a letter E missing, be enclosed in enclosures designed to prevent escape of odor or access by insects or other pests. Containers shall be emptied regularly or otherwise disposed of so as to control odor or risk to public health. Adequate provision shall be made for noise control by construction of all buildings and other enclosures wherein animals may be housed to achieve sound transmission class 45 or greater, and further will be constructed so that no noise by the occupant is apparent at any property line adjacent to residential zone, district, or residential property line. No animals shall be permanently housed on the property, nor shall animal breeding be permitted. That's the end of the amendment. The second page in the handout, it gives an aerial view of the property, and what it shows is the proposed facility, the curve of Soundview Road. It's approximately 200 feet to the inch, but what it demonstrates is that the proposed facility is in excess of 150 feet from any of the adjoining residences, and that's, I think that's Algonquin. This is this little guy. Yep. So the nearest residences are here and here. This is in excess of 200 feet. I had a question of George Crowell today. He said, bring it to the commission. So here's, I won't get into BFEs and stuff. I got a book of my own. I think I got that summer school book going on. Our zone is I-2, the purple I-2. I'll get you back to the cover sheet. And the adjoining zone is R3. Soundview Road is shown as no zone. In Madison, the zone lines very often at the center line of the road. Green Hill Road in Madison, it's 200 feet, I think, north of the center line of Green Hill Road is the zone line. I'm assuming that a road is zoneless. then this amendment works. Because Soundview has a 50-foot right, or 60-foot right of way. Go to the second page. We're proposing in proposed amendments a 40-foot building setback line, which guarantees the building will be at least 40 feet back from the street line. Soundview Road is a 60-foot right-of-way, which is an additional 60 feet to the 40, which guarantees the proposed 100 feet from any residential zone line and/or residential property. So if the road is zoneless, this model flies beautifully. If it's not, we'll have to do something on the fly.
Where did you get this proposed amendment from? Was this used from any other?
Michael, he can speak to it. He went to several towns to see what their regulations were, and he took the parts and reassembled it as a Guilford Model T.
Is it if it's the center line, is it a problem?
If it's a center line, it's a 60-foot right-of-way, so I'd only be 30 feet to my property line and then 40 more to the building line. So this regulation would have to read 70 feet instead of 100.
What was the magic number behind 100 feet versus 70 feet versus 50 feet?
I just thought 100 feet was a good number. I thought 150 feet for residential. All these I-2s have fairly massive lots on board. It's fairly easy to maintain, and it's a goodly subdivision.
So there was a magic number behind 100 feet.
George, Reggie?
Reggie and I discussed this issue this afternoon briefly. You look at the zoning map, it appears that the road right-of-way is not zoned, if you read the colors, which would be the initial interpretation I think that they used to draft this. However, we've never really answered this question before.
In the last 50 years?
I mean, it's got to have come up before, but neither of us could really think of a circumstance where this was actually interpreted. Where the boundary line is the road. The question is where the boundary line between zones is the road. Is the center line of the road the boundary, or is it the two road boundaries on either side? Are those the boundaries of the zone, and the road itself is unzoned?
Well, has anyone interpreted that before?
In Guilford?
Well, anyway.
Oh, I don't know. We didn't research that legally or anything.
No, I do remember it coming up once.
How did we conclude it? Do you remember?
The road was not zoned. The zone
Okay.
started at
the boundaries of the road.
boundary of the road with the property.
In which case, if that is your interpretation, then this proposal requires the 100-foot setback.
I mean, it wasn't a formal opinion or,
Right.
entered into the zoning code, but that's what was determined. The
That
other
appears
thing
to be the
too-
case. If you look at the map, that's what it looks like. Because most of the roads, don't have the same coloration as the adjoining zoning districts. So,
The other thing, though, is you do have the regulations, so no matter what the setbacks are, the odor, the noise, things of that nature cannot go into the residential zone.
That's correct.
So even if you're closer, you still can't get the things we're really concerned about, they're the odor, the noise, things of that nature, and there is protection in there.
Yes, absolutely.
Because even if you conform to the setbacks and there's noise or odor, you've got a problem.
Correct.
Why do you have a breeding restriction?
I'll defer to Michael or Kristen.
Yeah, I mean, that came up just as a way
Did
to
you
go
folks
back.
identify yourselves?
I'm sorry, I'm Michael Rothstein. I live in Guilford, 411 Andrew. We brought the breeding thing in because the word kennel or even any kind of facility that takes care of pets, we wanted to avoid kind of puppy mill. The ability to breed and sell pets is not zoned, and we didn't want zoning for that use. So we specifically put in there that this is not designed for any type of breeding, selling, puppy mill.
You were considering sort of the fact that it would end up in all the I-2s and all that.
So I'm Kristen DeLay, I live in Guilford as well, Briarwood Drive. I currently own the Medford Foods, which is an operating kennel in North Branford. And the specific reason, also you're exactly right, is we want to alleviate the concern moving forward that any type of breeder can come into Guilford. Because they call themselves kennels, and when they apply for permits or special uses, they apply under the word kennel. So that's why that's in there.
we alleviate the concern here, we also alleviate the concern going forward that you can't come in and operate under that.
We're learning so much.
Other questions from the commission members? Do you have any? Sure, George.
Is there anything in Guilford now that has a pet similar to what they're asking for? This is the first and one and only?
There's that vetted exit 67
Well,
that
there
we
are
saw.
animal hospitals, there are vets, there are
I'm talking about what they're asking
dog
for.
daycare facilities where
Daycare,
you,
yeah, right.
where you can bring the dog for the day, but then you can't leave it overnight, or the cat, whatever it might be. So this is more comprehensive than that. There is no other full-scale
Yeah,
kennel
there's
like
nothing else
this.
that we compare it to at
Right,
this
it's
point.
it's basically prohibited in Guilford. If this passes, it will be allowed subject to these rules.
Yeah, because we did have a hearing on that, on another site not too long ago, I do believe.
That be dog daycare?
I think they are
I'm
asking.
not sure what you're referring to.
I have to go back and check the record on it. I just wanted to make a comparison on it, because I didn't know if neighbors would object to it in any way. And that's always been my concern, because I'm not sure what kind of animals you're talking about, number one. I mean, dog, your pets, you're talking about pets versus zoo animals?
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's stated that you-
The first definition, we put that just to make sure, again, no monkeys, no tigers.
I'm just checking, just double checking, that's all.
House pets, felines, and,
Yeah. Sounds better all the time. All right, sir, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission?
Detail where the flood line is, like, is this in a flood zone?
Yes, the entire site's in flood zone AE11. So the building will be built at 1225, which is a foot of freeboard above the 11. And we intend to fill around the building so that we can go to FEMA for letter of natural. It's hard to read, it's a finished floor, 1225. The 11 is the flood zone. So we would fill so that everything is above 11. It would take the building out of the flood zone. It would remove flood insurance. It'd be a fairly short payback time.
Okay. Other questions from the commission? Let me go to the public. I'm sorry, George?
Keep in mind that if this amendment is approved, you're not approving this application right now. This would be subject to a special permit, which would be subsequent application. Right.
Anybody in the audience have a question? Okay, anybody want to speak in favor or against the application? Yes, ma'am. And then I'll come to you next. Okay.
Catherine Kiernan, mine's on View Lane in Guilford. I've been a customer of Kristen's for 5 years. There is a big need for a kennel in town. Right now, we currently have to go out of town to board our pets or for doggy daycares. I don't think there is a doggy daycare in town that we know of. So there is a big need for it. There are a lot of dogs in town, and we fully support it.
Thank you very much. Sir, do you have a comment?
Good evening, all. My name is Mark Wasserman, 167 Glenwood Drive. I am currently the chair of the Economic Development Commission here in Guilford. We are supporting this zoning amendment. We believe that it opens up a specific need in the town of Guilford to its residents, and we think they would be well served by this type of facility in town. Plus, it brings a business into town that's low impact, and welcome. That's it. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Okay, I'll go back to the commission. Any last questions for this hearing?
I got a question. If we reduce it from 100 feet to 70 feet, just so that other properties could be opened up if someone else had the opportunity or wanted to, the restrictions for odor and sound would protect the residential neighbors anyway. So we're not stuck on 100 feet. We could go down to less than that.
We can do 50. I mean,
Right,
because
because
100 feet's not a bad.
Right, so looking forward, why lock ourselves at 100 feet now when we would need to revisit it? We could just say 50 feet now, and as long as the odor and sound provisions are there, we're safe.
And then if it turns out that it is the center line,
Right.
I think
we
the
only
other
have.
safety is that 150-foot separation to existing residences. Also,
That's a
line
bigger
side.
deal. Yeah, so we could just we could just drop it down 30 feet and you wouldn't, obviously, you
Odd numbers kill me, but we could do it.
All right, good. Consider that too at the next hearing. Any other comments or questions on this from anybody? Yes, ma'am.
I have a letter to either read or just submit that was given to me. Somebody
Sure,
was able
you
to
can
come tonight.
submit it to the secretary, it'll be included in the record as part of this
You want me to read
application.
it?
Sure, why don't you read it into the record if you would?
So to the town of Guilford, I, Heather Lore, 645 Durham Road, Guilford, Connecticut, support amending the zone to allow for kennels in Guilford. I've had my dogs at Metro Pooch in Brantford for 4 years, North Brantford, excuse me. They're very reputable and I have had no problems with their hygiene, quality of care, and professionalism. I have been the town of Guilford's chair of the Conservation Commission, chair of the Land Stewardship Committee, and past vice president of the Guilford Land Conservation Trust. I am a current member of the town of Guilford Land Acquisition Commission. I have supported policies that provide safe outdoor recreation opportunities for Guilford residents and their dogs, especially on town of Guilford open spaces in GLCT lands. As you know, there have been problems with unleashed dogs in Guilford. The recently opened dog park in Nut Plains Park has helped address this. However, professional dog walkers continue to use spaces in Guilford. I believe many residents use service of professional dog walkers to provide care for their dogs during the working hours. Were there a convenient Guilford-based dog daycare such as Metro Pooch, I do not doubt it would be used and has the potential to address off-leash, poorly controlled professional dog walking. There are public health and safety as well as business aspects for the town to consider. For example, the location is not in a tightly packed residential district as some of the home base and other professional dog walking services are, notably Indian Cove. This area of the proposed location does not bring in business tax income to the town of Guilford, which would be amended by the location of the proposed low-impact business. Given that the business plan includes fences, monitored outdoor recreation areas for owners and their dogs, this would also relieve some of the pressure on the outdoor spaces, wildlife, and water quality. I urge you to consider this application for amending and zoning to allow for a kennel in Guilford. Sincerely submitted, Heather Laurie, PhD.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to continue this application to the second public hearing, which will be on 9/21. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I get the approval of the revised agenda? Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have two public hearing items that we can vote on. I just want to remind all the members of the commission that you either had to be present at both public hearings or view the tape for the last one.
I played hooky on last
So
meeting.
you'll
and I
recuse yourself on that one. Okay, then.
Didn't do my homework.
All right. So the first one, if I can get a motion, please, on Dennis Pacelli, that application.
Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a special permit application for Dennis Basili for an accessory structure over 750 square feet at 150 Rockland Road, map 118, lot 4A, as shown on an application dated June 29, 2016. This application is approved based upon the following conditions. There are no conditions. And this application is approved based upon a finding that it conforms with the zoning code. The special permit is effective on September 16, 2016, and upon filing with the town clerk.
Were there
Yeah,
some
that's-
conditions,
Kevin,
George?
then I incorporate Kevin's
Yeah.
memo dated September 6, 2016 into my motion as the conditions.
Thank you so much. Do I have a second? No second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
Just getting voted down.
No, I don't know.
Eddie,
I just want to make sure that we're clear about what Kevin's conditions were.
Yeah, I could read them in again.
Sure.
I recommend they go for variance before they build the building.
Oh, yes, this was,
Well, they won't get the building permit until they get that.
no, we can't control.
They can build it.
We can't control, like, what they put, obviously, they can be fined and whatever, but they could build, if they fit under whatever that they build it.
This is the
Well, yeah, this would be, I don't know, this isn't, Kevin didn't have conditions, this is just consistent. He did. The proposed addition is located within the Inland Wetlands Commission regulations.
Yeah, there's no conditions,
Yeah,
because it falls
it falls within the inland
their
wetlands,
jurisdiction,
yeah.
they already gave conditions for the property.
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
I mean, they could,
There are no additional conditions.
they have their conditions already in place by the Inland Wetlands.
Sorry, yeah. Oh, it's just a repeat.
But we're not adding anything new because inland wetlands already did it.
Yes.
Okay. So then they can build it, but they can't store the commercial vehicle in there until they get a variance.
Correct.
That's okay. That's where the variance comes in. Any other discussion on the application? Any findings that it conforms to the zoning regulations? We've heard from the public there was no negative input. Any other input or any other discussion anybody would like to have? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. We'll move on to Richard Durso. If I can get a motion on that one, please.
Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a special permit for an accessory structure in excess of 750 square feet for Richard Durso at 340 Rockland Road, map 119, lot 1A, as shown on an application dated 7/21/2016. This application is approved with the following conditions to incorporate the conditions made on Kevin McGee's memo dated September 6, 2016. This application is approved based upon a finding that it conforms with the zoning code. The special permit is effective on September 16, 2016, and upon filing with the town clerk.
Do I hear a second? Second. Okay, discussion. Same thing, no negative input from the public. I think with the conditions that have been added, it allows that to be built without any negative impacts to the property or the adjoining area. Any further discussion on the matter? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. All right, we'll move on now to the site plans. The first one, Whitfield Design LLC, 1200 Boston Post Road. This is a site plan revision to change the use from a bakery to a kitchen bathroom showroom. If I can get a motion to receive the application.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, is anyone here to present? Reg or George, you see the applicants, or? Oh, please, if you'd come up and identify yourself, and then just explain what it is you'd like to do.
My name is Claudia Clinton. I live at 24 Sunnybrook Lane in Clinton, and what I want to do is open a showroom. It's basically tile cabinetry that I would be putting in there. And currently it was a bakery about 2 years ago, so that's why I needed the change of use.
Parking's not an issue, or any of the other
No,
conditions you
no.
looked at? Is there anything in the file,
Yeah,
any
there's-
memos?
Yeah, there's one letter from Dennis Johnson. It's the applicant's proposed change in use is compatible with existing septic system capacity currently available on site.
Is this the one that was Doe Market?
No, this is
No.
the old Mariano's.
Mariano's in
Mariano's.
the Mulberry
This next-
Plaza.
This is 2 doors down from.
Right, which I was going to ask, do I need to recuse myself because of that or no?
No, not technically, at least.
It's not competition.
So you- Come on. But this is a, well, this is a less impactful use.
Probably less water, sewage generated.
Everything's less.
Less traffic.
No grease, no friolators.
Friolators.
I'm used to seeing the bakery counters in there.
Oh yeah, they took down, that wall was removed.
Okay. Any other questions from the commissioners on this matter? Okay, I'll ask for a motion then.
Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a site plan application for a change of use from bakery to retail store for Whitfield Design LLC at 1200 Boston Post Road, number 4, map 46, lot 49, as described in an application dated August 15, 2016. This application is approved based upon a finding that conforms with the zoning code.
Second? Second? Okay, any discussion on the matter? Seems like a less impactful use as to what was there, less sewage and water utilization, adequate parking for the zoning enforcement officers. I'd be in favor of it.
There was enough parking for bakery.
Absolutely. All right, so I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you, you're all set.
No, it's not.
You're welcome. The next item is Women and Family Life Center.
Sorry,
That's okay.
Wait until the end.
96 Fair Street, site plan revision.
Thank you for waiting.
Installation of additional parking, add 6 feet of high picket fence and landscaping, add to existing office use, yoga classes for up to 15 students. Got a motion to receive?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Sir.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Joe Wren. I'm a professional engineer representing the applicant, Women and Family Life Center. With us representing the center are Peggy Britt and Mary Beeman. What the application entails, as you had mentioned in the description, is just adding some additional parking and at the same time kind of standardizing the parking that's there now. I'm not sure if anyone has ever been by the site or into the site, but it's very compact, let's say, and it's very difficult to maneuver and find a standard size parking space. So as you come in, the site is located near the corner of Route 1 and Fair Street, kind of on the southwest corner. It is in the PV zoning district. There is a zone district boundary as shown on the map. South of there is the R1 district, and it's also in the historic district. We already went through the Historic Commission and got their approval for this project. There's no building improvements. There are 2 buildings on site, one in the front right on Fair Street, and then a newer, more modern building to the rear. No building improvements as part of this application anyways, minor renovations. The intent of this application is just to expand the parking area. This faint green line that you can see here, that's the current edge of the asphalt. So you can see with the asphalt here to there, there's just, between the buildings is very, very tight, to say the least. And there's no standard handicap space either with a standard aisle, no van accessibility at all. And then in the back, if you look closely on the plan, you'll see this lighter hatch, this narrow part here, that's the only pavement back there. There is some little bit of crushed stone, a little bit of grass that you can drive on and so forth. But what the plan does is expand it out in this direction to add some more spaces there. So the total proposed spaces are 20 with 1 standard van accessible handicap space. There is a little bit of fencing proposed right in this area where it's closest to the R1 district. Peggy and Mary had a lot of conversations with the Cellos who live on that adjacent property, which is a residential home. And they worked with them to come up with a plan that would work for both parties. So there is a fence that we included, a picture of a picket fence on the second plan in there, and then there is a little bit of buffer. Right now the pavement goes right up to the property line. We're pulling the pavement back a little bit so there can be a little bit of a buffer in there with some ground cover and so forth. There is some striping proposed just to channelize the traffic because now it's essentially a free-for-all. There's no striping at all in the parking lot. The lighting that's proposed, there are 6 pole lights with a maximum height of 10 feet. We do have the notes and the limit of the pole height on here with a fixture schedule. They will be operated to turn off the pole lights 1 hour after the close of business. And they would be obviously all dark skies, compliant, downlit, LED type lighting with a very small fixture head. And there is 1 bollard proposed as well, right at the intersection of the sidewalk and the new pavement area. There's a bollard there. We also provided a spec for that bollard. It's kind of a historical kind of type of bollard structure. The landscaping, the lighting and the landscaping, John Cunningham from TEC Landscape helped us out with the lighting and the landscaping on this for this project. The landscaping, there is some now. What's being added is 1 Cornelian cherry tree that he came up with that is located right in the back corner to provide some additional buffer to the residential property from this back area. And then there are, I believe, 6 American hollies kind of spread around here, and also a lot of ground cover, 200 creeping Larry oak and 24 ferns kind of spread throughout as ground cover on the edges of the parking. As far as, there are no changes to the septic system. As far as drainage, there are no curbs proposed. Right now, there are really no drainage problems on the asphalt. The soil underneath is very well-drained, sandy soil. At the edge of the parking, at the downhill edge, we do have a crushed stone apron, so the water is able to go off the parking lot and infiltrate into the ground rather than collect and point discharge. The grading in the back parking area continues. This is their property, and it's just open and it's wooded right now, and it's proposed to remain in that condition. So any runoff that made it to this point can run overland and absorb into the ground. I did talk to Reggie the other day. I know that we have a favorable report from the town engineer. Other than that, if there are any other questions, I could certainly entertain.
Okay, why don't we read into the record any letters from town staff?
This is dated September 2nd from Mark Damiani, Assistant Town Engineer. Reason being, Women and Family Life Center, 96 Fair Street, map 46, lot 38A, zone PV. Site plan approval to install additional parking and install 6-foot high picket fence. The applicant proposes to reconfigure the existing parking lot spaces and provide new directional striping. The stone aprons at the edges of the paved surfaces will provide stormwater runoff absorption. The lot is reconfigured to provide maximum spaces for the site. There are no engineering concerns with this application.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the commission?
Are there any regulations on the amount or percentage of the property that can be covered with pavement or not? And where do you fall on those?
Not that I'm aware of. The site is all the way to the back is about a little bit more than 3/4 of an acre. So it's a fairly large site just because it extends back here. I'm not sure if we computed that percentage. That hasn't come up.
There is an impervious surface coverage requirement.
Yes.
This is way under that. Reggie's going to look it up, but I'm sure this is well under it. Because of the large lot.
How many parking spaces are you going to have in it? Don't expand to
20.
Okay, did you have, what now? They don't have, they don't put anything in there.
Well, it depends on who's parking.
Yeah. And what size cars are parking?
No,
What's the striping?
Very good response. Thank you.
I also notated that there would be handicap parking available.
You said there's one.
Yes, there's one.
But is there one right now too?
We have none.
No, I didn't think.
We have no striping whatsoever.
It's free for all. It's just a paved surface right now, compact paved surface. It's free for all.
So Paul and the Historic Commission are okay with the lights? But as
They approved the lights, the fence, the site for the parking, yes. They saw the whole site plan, did a presentation in front of them.
One of the conditions that you have now on Fair Street in this vicinity is on-street parking, and that sometimes inconveniences residences, and this will alleviate that to some extent. At least this particular use will have more convenient and more accessible off-street parking.
Good. The impervious surface coverage is 60%.
That's the limitation.
Yes,
That's the maximum.
That's the maximum.
But theirs is much well
Yeah,
below
oh.
that.
Yeah, obviously.
Any other questions from the commission? Anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Okay, then I'll ask for a vote. Well, actually, I suppose I should ask for a motion first, right?
There's one in here. All right, voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a site plan revision for Women and Family Life Center at 96 Fair Street, map 46, lot 38A, as shown on parking lot improvement plan prepared for Women and Family Life, Inc., dated March 27, 2016, revised to 8/4/16, prepared by Indigo Land Design LLC. This application is approved with the following conditions: that prior to initiating construction, the Historic District Commission approved the plans.
That can be eliminated. We already did
This
that.
application is approved based on a finding that conforms with the zoning code.
Second. Okay, any further discussion of the matter?
Okay, then I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm on
that one, Phil.
Okay, applications to be received. First one is the recommendation from zoning committee to amend 27347 site maintenance outside display. Receive and set a public hearing date of 10/5. Have a motion.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Wait, he's recused though from this, right?
Hey, Reggie, on that, on the application. On the regulation, it was supposed to be like a one-year limitation. Does that need to be noticed any differently?
No.
Or no? Okay.
Because we don't, here, the thing is, right, so this is much like the last one that we faced. So even for the receipt, we actually have to be able to vote on it, correct?
Well, what we're doing is we're receiving it, and we receive it if it's a complete application or it's appropriate to go out. It's not
Right.
an approval of the
But
substance.
What's your question?
The issue here is that it's not appropriate to go out at this time based on things that you've discussed in the past, because the vote, it was not actually referred from the zoning subcommittee.
Well,
Yeah, there was one time when
The issue is that,
Yes.
Ray, you've discussed this before, there needs to be a quorum in order for there to be a referral. And sometimes we have not eaten things. We referred them back to a zoning subcommittee until we have a valid vote.
was there a valid vote? I don't know. I wasn't at the
It
meeting.
was just, the meeting was just me.
Oh,
It was just me there.
in the past, we haven't been able to accept that.
So, I mean, you
the
sort of
zoning-
brought this
The
up.
planning and
Just-
zoning
if
commission
it-
certainly accept any sort of,
Right.
But you needed a
to have a
quorum.
discuss, well, it doesn't, well, the
See, there
the
was an
planning and
instance-
zoning commission has the authority to make any amendments and changes to the zoning.
Right, but Ray has explained that we need to send things back to the subcommittee when there hasn't been a valid vote with a quorum.
And that came up during the last year when there was
Several
something that was
times.
disagreeable to certain members of the commission, so they made it go back until there was a quorum.
So, for example,
Correct.
today, there was an application here relating to a zone change, right?
Correct.
And that was just an individual bringing that application, so there shouldn't really be too
Well,
much
this
of a difference.
precedent said that there has to be a quorum.
But we just went, I mean, I don't know if the precedence counts when we went just the other way just today.
Well, if we want to contradict ourselves, then that's one thing.
Well, we will be contradicting ourselves tonight because of what happened earlier tonight, which is fine. I
No,
mean,
no, I mean,
guess
we want to
There was
contradict
a
ourselves.
motion on the table, so I guess we could take a vote to see
Well, we
who
could-
agrees with that or not.
Well, there's, I mean,
Well, just to
Well,
be
the
clear.
issue though, in this case, is that this particular zone change, we've got a number of people who can't actually vote on it because it directly affects their businesses or clients. And they've properly recused themselves in the past, but that also applies to receipt.
I don't believe it does. I
And
think,
if you don't believe that recusal applies to receipt, but it does apply to other things, then that's something that we can
Well, not to cut you
determine.
off, Walter, but did you say that you were the only one at the meeting?
I was the only one at the meeting.
So this is entirely your work?
Right, this is just
Well,
Josh's
no, this is-
referral, which is fine.
This is a second, yeah, no, the first meeting, no, this is, and this is certainly a group, and even if it was only my work, which it certainly wasn't, but even if it was, that wouldn't make any difference as to.
No, I
whether or
mean,
not
I just
the-
mean that we need a proper referral from the zoning subcommittee. The zoning subcommittee was just established for this, really for this purpose.
Sure.
Tom changed the composition of the zoning subcommittee, which is fine, and which he's allowed to do. But they were tasked with drafting this, and then once they had something that they wanted, they need to refer it out with a quorum. Otherwise, I mean, what was the purpose? Otherwise, I mean, if we want to be able to vote on
Zoning
putting
regulations,
zone
whatever,
changes
sure.
right here at this table,
Which we certainly can.
we might be able to do that, but we could do that at any time,
Yeah,
which means
exactly.
any commissioner could actually propose a
Propose it.
zone change directly
You
at the meeting,
are exactly
which we
right.
haven't been doing.
This is not properly a recommendation of the zoning committee.
This
This
is
is
correct,
a
this is not properly a recommendation of the zoning committee.
but it's a proposed zoning
In the
amendment.
past,
What's that?
and in the past, when we've had recommendations from the zoning subcommittee, for instance, with the propane tanks, right? You and I, we discussed the propane tanks, we had a quorum because Josh was also there, so there were 3 of us. Then, at the end of the discussion, before we had the opportunity to vote, you had to leave immediately before the vote when we were discussing this, the change for zone changes.
Okay.
Jeff Beatty was there. We referred it to the commission, and you were very concerned that we did not have a quorum, and you expressed concerns that it should be returned
At the
to the
meeting.
zoning subcommittee.
Right, but example
Here,
tonight.
it may be better because here, not only did we not have a quorum, no minutes were taken at that meeting
So
where the
then-
recommendation was made.
Okay, well then, how about?
Do we
the-
have the minutes for that meeting?
How about the proposed zoning amendment, if you let me finish,
Yeah.
with regard to like the definition of the coastal resilience height requirements? Was that a recommendation from the planning committee?
That was voted on by the planning committee.
And that's
it
what
was
we
voted
did.
on. Okay, then why don't, just to be consistent, why don't we send it back, and at the next quorum, we'll bring it forward again?
That's fine.
Okay?
Just get a quorum from the zoning subcommittee and then.
And then we'll
move
bring it forward.
Or another alternative would be for someone else to propose this amendment.
Correct. EDC could
Economic Development Commission.
come back and propose it.
Right,
and
the
refer
zoning
it to us.
enforcement officer can propose zoning amendments. Anybody can propose a
Well,
zoning
you know,
amendment.
when we were trying to deal with the propane issue, you know, certain members of the commission who were vehemently opposed to it made it a point to delay and
Yeah,
obfuscate.
we pushed it back a
movement
couple
forward.
of different times.
So
for
to
this
do
purpose.
that now, you know, I can't have your cake and eat it too. If it was the rule then or the practice then, it should be the practice now. Unless, of course, you know, it really is, you can make your rules up as you go along. And in that case, maybe we should move forward. It all depends.
My suggestion is to avoid the controversy, we'll take it up,
Doesn't
call
really
another zoning committee meeting, take it up there and resubmit it.
Sounds like
And then everybody will be equally unhappy. Okay, special permits. Country Realty. Special permit accessory structure over 750 feet, request to build a 40 by 32-foot garage behind the house where sunroom and garage once stood. Receive and set a public hearing date of 10/5.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, correspondence, Trailblazer, Denali, request for warehouse sale September 16th through the 18th.
What is that? What is a warehouse sale?
Where is it?
It's down at that business is down at the end of Soundview, that big building that's right down at the end on the left-hand side. I believe that's where they're located.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
By the
It is.
post office.
Yes.
Yeah, next to the post office.
Still called
The address on it?
Denali?
The
What's that?
address?
Yeah, they're calling themselves Trailblazer slash
Yeah,
Denali.
That's right.
They have a huge warehouse in that building. I think they take up more than 50% of the building. And they want to have a warehouse sale for 3 days, the 16th, 17th, and 18th.
Okay, they need to come to the commission for approval for that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we just approve it, and they have put their signs up, and you go in the warehouse and you can buy something.
Okay.
So they don't currently,
They can't have a retail store there, that's an industrial zone. That's why they need us to have.
We don't have to notice anyone. This is like in 2 weeks, this is less than 2 weeks.
No, we don't have to notice anyone. It's just a request, just like somebody's asking for a tent sale.
Good.
Okay. Any
So,
comments on this? Okay.
lots of parking.
I guess we can just get a motion to approve it from someone,
I make a motion that we approve this.
and we'll hear a second.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, second discussion regarding the appointment of 2 new members to the planning committee. I think it's the chairman who really has to appoint him, and since he's not here, I don't think it would be beneficial to discuss this, so I'm going to ask to just move that on to the next agenda when Tom's present. Regular meeting minutes for the 8/17/2016. I was not here, so I won't vote on it, but I'll ask, have anybody had the opportunity to review it, and are there any updates, changes, or modifications?
I reviewed it, and it was substantially correct.
Okay, I'll ask for a motion.
To approve it.
I'll abstain.
Second, anyone?
Second.
Okay, I wasn't here, so I can't vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, they're accepted. Approval of bills, Shoreline Times, $172.50. Can I get a motion?
Move to pay the bills.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, having no further business, I'll call for an adjournment. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. Okay, this has to go back into the file. I
Hang
think.
out. Oh, no, that's
Is that yours?
the actual